Welcome, Mario.
Gentlemen, welcome to Datocracy 2025. We're still
Thank you.
around.
Let's see how
Uh,
we have to
the
talk
world has
here.
not ended, although a few people felt like it did on Monday. And we are pressing forward.
Yep.
So we are streaming live. And Ernest, you've been busy. Have you formally published a bunch of articles, or have you just been doing drafts and emails?
Uh, I did publish the one today, and the other one is just for us. The
Okay. But
the
your
one,
original Datocracy article you published back at the end of December or early January?
yeah,
Uh, yeah.
yeah. I edited it, and I added some Datocracy thingies, and yeah, I've been working on that.
Great. So anyway, at the end of last meeting, we talked about, I was getting a little confused by your definition of patriarchy and which problem you were solving and how you were defining, the scope of it and the solutions. You've done a bunch of work on that, and um, I was going to put Tom on the hook to languageify to try and schematize some of your terminology to see if you can make it clearer. But then you came out with a little bit of a bombshell this morning. You had a new blog post, or at least a draft. So why don't you maybe just give a quick status update on what you've been working on for the last month and your current thinking about what the challenges and opportunities are, Ernest? And then we
All
can kind
right.
of go from there
Okay, let's do that. Uh,
and share the screen if you want to show any of the posts.
okay, so let's do screen share. Okay. So, this is not it. Sorry. Chose the wrong screen. Mm, Great about it. Okay. Well, let's do it backwards. Let's do the one that I uh did this morning. So yeah, the one that I did this morning is which is part of the work that I've done this month, is the people's billions. We've heard or we've seen and experienced the consequences of this incredible wealth being concentrated in about two or three people, and they can just do whatever they want. I mean, it's just unbelievable. These people can move votes, they can set the course of humanity, and they are not great minds. They are just, uh, 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 driven, but driven by their ego and their quest to win these big measuring contests. And these are not these should not be the representatives of humanity. These are the worst representatives of humanity. So the people have to have an option. We have foundations that talk about voting and talk about the environment, but they what they contribute or what is pitiful. It's just like thousands of dollars, maybe millions, but these other guys they can pump in billions of dollars in whatever they want, and people have no option. And in the past few years, speech or money equals speech. It wasn't the case 20 years ago, but because of these oligarchs, they bribe politicians, they bribe justices, and they got this situation where, oh, our money equals the speech of people. So how can people compete with 2 or 3 billionaires plus corporations when it comes to speech, when it comes to political speech? So I think that people have to have a real option, uh, and people have to have their own version of a billionaire, and actually they have to have their own billions. So, in just I just have this idea of people pledging to give $100 a year. If enough people do it, we can gross $1 billion or more. But it requires people to be motivated and in a good organization. And we've talked about this before. Not a single brain, being in charge, but the entire people uh, uh, democratically making decisions and choosing what to do, right? So it's not like just one person has this crazy idea and they can throw a whole lot of bunch of money at it. No, the entire uh, set of members, voters. Each member has one vote, right? Just like it should be, just like it used to be. Um, uh, so ideas bubble up. We've talked about it before. People come up with ideas and they throw them to discussion and they are refined. In this case, we have an idea that changed into a concept, a proposal, and then a project. And when it comes to projects, we have something like a directors. I won't call it a board of directors, but directors are people who we know that they have good values. We know where their heart is. Like AOC, Bernie Sanders, Mackenzie, Mackenzie Scott, right? Um, George Soros. These people have demonstrated with their actions that they put their money and their effort where their mind is. So this is just what I've worked on in the past couple of weeks. It's called the People's Billions, and hopefully something comes out of it. If nothing more, then getting the idea into people that we have to get together because
Right. And when you say we, do you mean people who agree with your values?
Essentially, but the people who we said the values of this organization, right? We said the values are what do I have here? One person a vote, everything is open, everything is transparent, right? We have entities like OpenAI, which you started like this, but they changed. They changed their values completely. So we have to have something that is not fungible and changeable like that. These are core values. We will always be transparent. We will always be for the right of people to vote. And these ideals, yes, they skew towards democratic ideals and progressive ideals, but that's just the way it is.
Some libertarians would get along with, the people who are in favor of sunshine laws would probably be aligned with that.
Yeah, but this is not. I'm not. It will not be seeking specific people, right? Just Democrats or Greens. It will seek people. People will be attracted to it because they see the values that it has. Oh, it has these values. Oh, I agree with those. Okay. So.
And just curiously, you did have Rage Against Patriarchy
Yes.
in there. So is there a subtle or direct connection between these values and patriarchy or anti-patriarchy?
Yeah, this falls into the whole Rage Against Patriarchy umbrella. I was gonna start a Rage Against Billionaires, but I'm like, no,
But by the way, you did mention George Soros on your list of people you liked, and he is worth $7 billion.
Yes.
And Mark Cuban,
So,
yes.
so I
I
feel
was
like
look,
that's a little dicey to draw the line there.
yeah, I wasn't sure about including his name, but
I mean,
uh,
I think you need to be honest with yourself. Are you
yes.
against billionaires in principle? Or are you
Oh,
just against billionaires who disagree with you?
no. I'm against the psychopathic billionaires. George
Well,
Soros is
okay.
not
How do you
psychopathic.
define? Okay, so I think this is getting into patriarchy in terms of what it is
Wait a minute.
exactly you're
Wait a minute.
against.
Are you against poor psychopaths?
Yes, yes. So I'm for people who are for human rights, who are for the rights of women to decide what to do with their bodies. I'm for those people, and those generally align with democratic and progressive people, and that's just the way it is. There's very few conservative people who would say yes, women should have the right to do whatever they want with their bodies. That's just not.
So, so I think this is actually maybe we should just segue into the other conversation then,
Yeah.
because I feels like that underlying all of this, there's two issues which it would be helpful for me to disentangle. Okay. There
Okay.
is the general question of human rights, which covers a wide range of different things. Historically, it's included like the right to practice one's religion, the right to free assembly, and things like that. And then since the 1970s, there's definitely been a real focus on the rights of the disadvantaged, rights of minorities, rights of women, abortion rights, and things like that. And you know, the one of the questions I had is I know in your mind those are synonymous, but there are people who actually have a range of different positions on these things.
Hmm.
Um, and like when you throw in like China's policy and infanticide, some of these get really dicey in how you define those words. And so it would help. So maybe I think this might be a good chance to go back to where you were with your most recent articles about beyond patriarchy, because I thought there were some really interesting nuances you were pulling out there.
Yes. So this is what I show on the screen now. Uh, so
I
I
still
saw.
see the people's billions
Say
on my
again.
screen. I still see
Oh,
the
you still
people's
see?
billions.
Oh, sorry. You are.
I see the guiding principles and core values.
Of the
Uh,
people's billions.
yeah, with yeah. I need
No.
that.
Well,
No,
yeah.
yet.
At
Okay,
the
yeah,
very top, true.
yeah. I thought you were going to go into the beyond patriarchy bit. So if that's what you were trying to show us. That didn't happen.
What is he now?
I see analyzing patriarchy tab
Yes,
in the beyond
yes,
patriarchy collection.
excellent. So, yeah, per our conversation, like what, 3 weeks ago, we was through our email thread, we were talking about or we were talking about the man womb, right? Like, what would it be like if men could have some sort of from pack where they can gestate babies? But
Let's call this the seahorse solution, right? Because that's what seahorses do. The
uh,
males actually carry the babies. I don't know if you knew that
yeah,
one.
yeah. So because I think the core of the problem is men's jealousy towards women. Women have the power to create life, and men don't like that. Some men.
Interesting. Let me just pause and make sure I heard you. That not just a aspect. The core of the problem is that A, women have a unique ability to give birth. B, men are jealous of this fact, and therefore C, they've instituted patriarchy to what?
Control that power. They, they want to control them eh, and use them, but mainly control. And
Interesting.
yeah, this of course happened millions of years ago. Uh, historians or archaeologists, the people who
Anthropologists,
study,
I think, is the word you're looking for.
there you go, anthropologists. They have studied like where did this come from? And they said that division of labor started when people started to they put it together with when people started to cook meat, and when they did that, like the division of labor started with females doing certain things and males doing other things, and we have just brought that, millions of years, thousands of years into now, where it just seems kind of normal. Like people, it's hard to imagine another way.
And just so I understand what you're saying, are you equating division of labor with patriarchy?
No, I'm saying that that's the origin of the thing. That's
Okay,
where.
so that there was a division of labor. I mean, first of all, let's acknowledge the fact that humans are also sexually dimorphic. We tend to have, in addition to the ability to bear children, there are, higher testosterone levels in males, and males tend to be larger and have greater muscle mass. And that women, in addition to bearing children, also nurse children. And that has biological implications and physiological implications. And so there is that biological dimorphism. And that what I'm hearing you say is anthropologically that led to most, but not all cultures having a range of divisions of labors, which then over time, often, but not always, calcified into patriarchy.
Correct. Like, but
Okay.
yeah, not all. Like I understand there's some communities in China where women like essentially use males just to get pregnant, but then they say goodbye to them, and when they have a strict matriarchy, right? Where women reign, and they set the agendas and all that stuff, and the males are happy with that in that community.
Right. And it's worth pointing out, and I think this is a good historical context too, is like things like the Persian Empire was much more egalitarian than, say, the Roman Empire. And the Roman Empire has probably one of the more extreme creation myths, which is the rape of the Sabine women, where all the sons of Romulus and Remus, fought each other, and then they had a bunch of dudes sitting around, and they needed wives, so they just went and grabbed women, and the women became the property of the men, and that was the foundation of the Roman Republic, which is more or less the basis of Western civilization, right? And so the interesting fact that I want to point out is that there have been a range of different models tried, in different populations, and for better and worse, patriarchy is especially, Greco-Roman patriarchy is kind of the default assumption in the modern world. And it got that way really even before Christianity showed up, although Christianity arguably cemented it.
Yes.
And so there's, from a purely amoral evolutionary perspective, it feels like patriarchy won the cultural evolution race. Whether one is fairly or not is kind of an awkward question when you're talking about evolution. But I think that's a good way to understand how we got where we are now.
Correct, yes.
And the most interesting thing that you've said in the last month was, what's the alternative to patriarchy? And I think you were going back and forth between meritocracy and matriarchy. Have you come to a conclusion and that you're willing to stand by, or is that still an open question?
I have mainly settled on meritocracy, but then I've also thought, well, what if the people who are meritorious are mostly men? Like, what happens in a community where women are not educated, just the men are. If we let's put a meritocracy here, then only the men would be elevated. So I think it's, people talk about diversity, equity, and inclusion, and I think it has to be part of that. It has to be meritocracy plus, or, meritocracy plus. Like,
Right.
yeah, or at least the pool of people with merit that has to be diverse. If when it comes to that, so everybody gets educated, everybody gets the opportunity to do whatever they want. Math.
Right.
So
Now here's an awkward. Well, here's where it gets really awkward. In when I went to China in 1991, I discovered they had equal ratios of men and women in physics. Right, it was very balanced. In the
mhm.
U.S., it was like 10-1, right? And you can check me on this, but the research shows that in authoritarian regimes where they enforce equality, you tend to get nice, even gender balances in a lot of these systems. In market economies where people follow their preferences, men tend to move towards left brain disciplines, and women tend to move towards relational disciplines. And there's some, maybe not overwhelming, but some evidence that men tend to care more about things and women tend to care more about people.
Mhm.
And if that's what people want, are we okay with that in terms of division of labor, as long as there is a political system that honors both equally, so both have a way to have a sufficiently equal voice in running things?
Yes, like we can go into what, let's say, organization set up, and it's set up. You have different positions, so they set it up so that to have that position, you have to meet some qualifications. We have to make sure that gender and race and sex are not part of those. Right? We have to make sure that the
You,
take
you,
gender out
you,
from those.
so, but like, what does that mean exactly, right? I think that's the interesting place, and maybe let me defer to Tom for some of the more precision on this. Is
Yeah.
that, well, because like, if you like to talk, you know, uh, is that a lot of like, if you like to speak in public in front of people, versus if you're afraid of that, is that a valid criteria for public office?
I think that instead of, you know, signaling or choosing specific attributes, people will have to analyze the whole, right? So there might be people who are really good speakers, and they have other qualifications. There might be chemical engineers or whatever. So they have the whole persona has certain abilities. There will be another person who doesn't speak too much, but has a lot of knowledge when it comes to, I don't know, social issues. So if the people have to choose between those two, I would think they would choose whoever is the most effective at leadership in that position using all their attributes. Like,
Right. But that's in a given context, right? I mean, if we're in a world where, like the Greek agora, where things are decided through public debate, then the person who's going to be most effective is the person who's the best public speaker. If we lived in a datocratic world where we all sit down and take quizzes with the computer to argue with it, to help feed the AI machine, then maybe the person who's best at sitting quietly by themselves and yelling at a computer for hours on end would be the person who's most effective, right? It almost feels like it's begging the question, isn't it? If you choose a given system, you're implicitly rewarding certain attributes over others.
yeah, yeah, I guess.
So maybe let's take a step back.
Mhm.
The thing that I think I found really intriguing is, maybe let's call it the generativity question. Is that a system that makes the best use of all the available talents and abilities of its citizens, of its members, should outcompete one which unfairly penalizes people for irrelevant attributes, that fails to develop their human potential, and unfairly rewards people for short-term vanity metrics.
Vanity metrics?
Like someone who's really tall is more likely to get elected president, right? Because the systems and the cultural affect around that tends to reward those kinds of behavior. That's why we have like a vanity metric,
I see. Um,
as opposed to their actual ability to contribute to the common welfare of everyone.
to be more fair in that situation, we will have to really analyze, use essentially use language or a language-like system that, in addition to the qualities you're talking about, being gregarious and all that stuff, that it's like an exam. Like, can you, you're a surgeon, can you perform this type of surgery effectively and without killing the patient? And if you submit to that kind of analysis, if you break down people according to their real abilities and we test them constantly, then that would be a way to maybe remove it. Also, we have to make sure that the electorate has all that information. Like, a lot of people are proud of the fact that they don't know anything. Yeah, I'm not uneducated. Yeah, that's great. I don't know why they are proud of that, but they are. And so it's like they set themselves up to be manipulated, and they are happy with that. The fact that people said, "Yeah, we are making up stuff and we are lying to people just because we want to get a message across," and people accept that. It's, to me, it surprised me, but some people are happy to be lied to, as long as whatever they feel is the good thing to do happens. If you're a racist and you or a misogynist, you don't care what the guy is saying, as long as, oh yeah, let me get this misogynist person on top so that we can you know abuse women or have our women do whatever women want. Like, it's people have these what I deem unfair and unjust values, that the value of men are over women. That's a value that they hold. We get taught it. Even they get started to women. Yeah, you have to like submit to men. It's taught through religion, through these scriptures, that it actually says the women has to submit to the men. Like, we have that, and then people internalize it so much that instead of talking about the economy and human rights, they said, okay, who is this authoritarian person who's gonna put his foot down and make these other people toe the line? Who's gonna do that? And they choose the person because that's the way that they have been raised. They have been raised to, oh, there's a man in the family and he's the one who sets the agenda, the one who solves problems. He's the ultimate say in everything. So they are brought this way, and they just keep doing that in their adulthood, and they are just or we, a lot of, not myself, but a lot of people think like that, and they think that's normal, and that's why I cannot put patriarchy and religion in the same place, because, yeah, like you said, religion used patriarchy or patriarchy used religion. I think they are both BFFs because they work together. And when we become, when we see the leaders of the religion, the Pope, I don't know, in the Jewish religion, if they have something similar to that, but, in Islam, they have the I forget what they call it in Iran, that the one religious guy who was over,
Ayatollah.
there you go. So, it's a man. It's not. We haven't seen a woman in that position, right? So that's
Right.
yeah,
Okay.
that is a value. That is a value that overrides everything else. That is an
Right. But
important thing.
right. So Tom, are you ready to try and do some languaging?
I can. Yeah.
Okay.
So yeah, that was at least where we were hoping to end. At least the challenge I put out there, if you guys are up for it, was Ernest has a lot of emotion, a lot of terms that he has a strong concern about. And I was hoping that if you want to try and see if you can use language to help us define them more precisely.
Okay. I've played a trick recently in a couple of lectures I held. One was San Francisco lecture, where I use perplexity, for example, to quickly generate some answers. And I actually do it in under 10 minutes. You want to
You
play
want to
that
share your
game? See,
screen?
I can. Yeah.
Ernest, you can stop sharing and let Tom
Share.
play. Are you
Yeah.
game for that, Ernest? I know you have
Yes.
awkward, you're emotionally
Yeah.
wary of AI, but at least for this exercise.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Go ahead.
Okay. Okay. Just a moment. I have to sort of clean up my screen so I can see things.
Do you want to stop sharing until you get the right thing on your screen, or let's
No,
enjoy
no,
your family
I'm
photos?
yeah, right. I'm almost there. Okay, so let me get perplexity up and oopsie, I'll get that one out of the way.
And by
We'll
the way,
go
the
to
question
pro.
that I'm hoping to answer by the end of this is what exactly is Ernest against, and what exactly is he for, in a way that we can design a system to optimize for that.
Okay.
That's where I'm hoping.
Okay. So the here assume that our core concern is and Ernest needs to help me here, but I'll draft it. In a nutshell, is justice for all humans. Is that at all correct, or how would you formulate? What is the core
That's
concern?
that's correct enough. Yes.
Yeah. Okay. Just again, we don't have to do too fine point there. Okay. Now, um, please uh, uh, suggest the top 10 most critical values that we need to improve compared to today I'm going to put narrow it into USA, so forget Europe. Okay. And uh, uh, quantify them on a table in language with scale, tolerable, goal, and 3 critical stakeholders. Okay.
Now you have some typos in there that might confuse, but
Now it turns out that typos don't matter much.
oh,
It gets it anyway. See, stakeholders. I've gotten kind of
Nice.
lazy. So we'll just do this very quickly as a quick example. I'll try to get it, done in under 10. Okay, so here we have some critical values, right? And again, we can all go through them one by one and say you're missing a critical value, or this is not one of my critical values. But actually, the first run through it, see that Trump agrees with you completely, reducing prison sentences.
By the way, just it seems like everything here, I mean, at least half of these seem to be about justice for all. It seems to be interpreting that as criminal justice. That feels
Maybe, and we can tune it.
yeah.
But I suggest we don't tune it yet. Get just roughly see what it comes up with.
Yeah.
So here I have, the name of something. It didn't give me a scale, as I clearly asked for, but all right. A tolerable goal. It's a something, and it's interesting to note what stakeholders are interested in this or not. Okay, so we have a framework here. Let's just say, for the sake of the importance of these values. That's pretty nice. And you all get a copy of this afterwards. Okay. So let's see. So where's
I mean, I do
my...
feel like we got seriously derailed by the fact that it's focusing on criminal justice as opposed to,
Well,
gender and other things.
yeah. Well, then we can do something about that.
Rewrite?
Yeah. By the way,
There's a word
there it
rewrite
is.
that right there, right in the middle, right? Or
Yeah,
ask a follow-up
there-
or rewrite?
Well, here, again, let's see, excuse me, but use justice
Yeah.
just a
Do we
moment.
lose?
Okay. No, use justice in the sense of equality. What do we want here?
How about just in the most general sense of social welfare, maybe?
Oh, you can
Okay,
put
we'll try it out.
okay.
Well, we'll try just to be quick here, because we can't use 20 minutes to discuss each word here, but we can show what it does in terms of... I got that stuff in there. So let's see
try
what
that.
it gives us. Yeah, just try it out. And so here we have some other stuff. Hope that feels better. Okay.
Some
Now, by the way,
outcomes. Yeah. Okay.
yeah,
And again, this probably over-indexed on the word welfare.
yeah, right. Okay. So here was yep. Here's some more. Okay,
So can we
importance of
just
the
take a
value.
moment and say, like, is this getting at all close to the concerns Ernest had, or are we diverging?
Good question. Is this in the right territory? We don't want to perfect it now, because then I can't do the next two steps very quickly
Right, but if
before
we
the
haven't even
end.
heard what Ernest cares about, then it doesn't matter if we get to the next steps.
We can discuss that, but I won't.
Yeah.
No, I've done one iteration in the direction. It's the principle of how we can quickly generate such ideas is more important than the actual content at the moment.
Sorry,
I
hold
would say
on.
there.
Just so we're clear on the goal here. The goal here is for me to understand what Ernest wants. And so
Yeah, I'm
having a
working on it.
beautifully formatted system that doesn't actually capture his
Okay.
concerns is not of interest to me.
I didn't know that was the goal. I thought the goal
Okay,
was
let me
something
try that
about...
again. My goal
So,
by the end of this hour is to have a
yeah.
precise understanding of what Ernest is for and what he is against.
Okay. Well, we can start by saying, is this any better, Ernest? Are we in the right territory at all, or do we need to ask it better?
By looking at the column on the left, we talk about income equality, universal healthcare, job skills, childcare support. Well, I guess, they're okay, but they're not specific enough. Like, I want to, okay, and this is extreme, I guess. I want to not kill women because they are pregnant, which is like, if you're pregnant, the women becomes like property of a state. Like no, yeah, you can't abort if the baby if the fetus dies in your stomach. No, you cannot take it out. You have to stay there. That kind of injustice because the body of a man is never told, hey, you cannot do this procedure because we say
No.
so.
Now, Ernest, I generated a new one, just really asking it to focus on women. And so the question is, did we get nearer to your intent here?
Well, as long as it talks about, well, okay, I like women in leadership.
Although it mostly talks about corporations, doesn't seem to be touching on politics at all.
Yeah, reproductive
Because
health care, that's close. Domestic violence, that's also good.
yeah, but this is actually really helpful because this is highlighting one of my tensions that I'm unclear on, which is that how much of I feel like there's two things in tension, or something to clarify. One is that in general, you want a world where everyone's included, everyone's respected, everyone has the same rights. And your particular thing that you feel you're most emotionally invested in is equal treatment of women, where someone else could have that same value and be very concerned about poverty, and someone else could be very concerned about race, and someone else could be very concerned about incarceration. And I think that's one of the tensions is your real concern about gender, and you're aligned with those who are concerned about those other things, but that's not really your concern.
I guess mostly yes. Like I had to decide, had to choose one aspect of the situation where we have a rapist president. Like, how is this possible, right? Like, okay, this is possible because a lot of women voted for this guy. And like, why is that? Why do women put in charge a person who rapes women and who says, I can grab women?
Can we ask Perplexity that? I'm curious how it would answer. Just why did women? I think that was really his question. Let's.
Yeah, of course, you're right.
He has that. Okay, that statement.
He was not convicted of rape. He was found liable for sexual abuse. To be precise.
Okay, the judge did say which equals rape. But anyway.
Yeah.
But it's answering our question, or trying.
Yeah, and I think let's pause it there because I think that's an interesting answer. I'm curious how Ernest feels about that.
Policy look at the disbelief of okay, largely economic factors, cultural and religious values. I think this touches on a lot of policy priorities. Yes, like okay, like he raised people, but he agrees in the treatment of immigrants. Yeah, I don't want him here. So even though he raised that overrides.
Yeah, and let's play the counterfactual. Like, I wouldn't vote for Biden because he's senile. And, if I had to choose between a criminal and an idiot, I would choose the criminal. That's not a great choice, but it is a rational one. I don't know if you remember by the way, I don't know if you remember during Louisiana, this actually happened, is there was a racist and a convicted felon who were running for governor. And the bumper stickers were "Vote for the crook. It's important."
Wow.
And you can disagree with it, but you can say, like, yeah, given then there's always, of course, the Cthulhu option. Why vote for the lesser of two evils?
So it depends on a person's core values. if you ask the person, what are your values? And then they would use that to the fact that some their values are not my values. Like I value justice and fairness more than uh
And when
in,
you say justice and fairness, we have to talk about, there are a lot of people who thought that the way Biden handled the Hunter Biden stuff was highly immoral and unethical and illegal. Would that have been a reason to disqualify Biden as well and vote for some third party candidate? Or do you think that there are certain values that are important enough that you would overlook legal irregularities?
here's my answer. Knowing that we live in this two-party system and knowing that the vast majority of people are going to vote Democrat or Republican. Yeah, I didn't like how Biden addressed the Palestinian thing, but I'm not going to vote for the other guy because there are other things that are more,
Right. So,
more.
and I think that, yes, I think that's a really honest answer is you do have your policy preferences and your ethical preferences. And based on that, you make a hard choice about which priorities matter most to you, given the reality of our two-party system. And
Yes.
so the fact that other people do the same, I think is a really important nuance to honor, right? If you're a poor, say you're a woman who works in a union factory, and you feel like the Democrats have totally abandoned you, and Trump is promising to bring jobs back to the US, because that's the only way you see any future for your life. Like, would you condemn her for choosing Trump over Kamala Harris?
Hmm. That's interesting. One, let's assume that Trump was being honest. If Trump is being honest when it comes to what he would do, then yeah, I will go with the woman.
Yeah. So I
But
mean, yeah.
if we analyze what Trump has said to get power, which essentially is lie, right? He lies all the time.
I mean,
He
let's be clear about how he lies, though. Trump has been perversely good at sticking to some of his most outrageous campaign promises. And in particular, he is definitely credible as being anti globalization and sort
mm,
of just, withdrawing from the WHO, withdrawing from the WTO, erecting high tariffs and high barriers. Like, that is something that one could credibly claim. I mean, Peter Zeihan, who hates Trump as much as I do, says, I got to give Trump credit because he understands that globalization is over. He's willing to make great trade deals with Mexico and stiff it to China in a way that Biden and the Billionaires Club, hate. But like I said, and this is the thing, right? Is you can't just say, well, if this fact is false, therefore it's okay. Like it's okay to vote for, you shouldn't vote for Trump because this fact you believe is false. But that's different than saying, are these values rational, right? And I think this is part of the question that I had for you is that do you really want people just to believe all of your facts? Or do you want to understand people's values? And which values do you think you can make a credible case that people should share?
uh, yeah, about understanding people's values. Um,
I mean, this is good. This is what was the prompt you used for this, by the way? I'm curious, Tom. This is a good, helpful point. If you care about social justice, and that's a good shorthand for kind of the positive framing of democratic values. And I think I think that really helps. That really goes beyond the narrow definition used earlier. This probably describes you, right, Ernest?
Empathy, compassion,
Equity, accountability.
accountability. Yes.
Okay. Now, what is let's ask the next question. What's the most plausible alternative to that concern, to a concern for social justice?
Alternative?
Yeah,
What the next value?
alternative concern. I'm actually curious to see what it'll say.
Oh,
Yeah,
you're talking to Tom.
yeah. I'm asking to Tom to. Yeah, I'm not going to ask you for that one. I'm not sure you could guess that, but uh, interesting. Individual liberty and economic efficiency.
Hmm.
And um, and this is something that's played out, here in San Francisco, right? Which is that, like, we want to make sure everyone's treated with dignity, and the end result of that is you have entire blocks which are covered with homeless people because it would be unfair and non-empathic to clear them. And the Democratic, San Francisco liberal mayor says, like, no, we need to start enforcing the law. We need to clear these people out, right? And when social stability and respect for individuals gets into respect for the poor and the marginalized, like, do we prioritize the poor and the marginalized and, like, drive hardworking taxpayers out of the city? That is and I think, and let's be honest, I think there's a fundamental tension between what I would call sort of the paternal values of honor and achievement and security for my own versus sort of the maternal values of equality, fairness, nurturing, compassion. And as someone who has kids, this is a hard tension that there is not a trivial answer to. And what's worse is that in different contexts, the best course of action is often on one extreme or the other. But there's always negative consequences. And I think that the more interesting question to me is, could you, and this would be a hard pill to swallow, but could you accept the possibility that, like, say, when the Americans were facing the British in the Revolutionary War, having a bunch of macho dudes who are willing to sacrifice their lives to kill a bunch of British soldiers was on balance a good thing, even if some of them were pretty heinous slave owners? Or would you really rather prefer a world where the only people standing up for your values were those who preached tolerance, peace, and compassion?
I would say the latter.
So you would be totally fine with living under tyrannical British rule rather than having your own side take up sort of patriarchal opposition.
Okay, so going back to the past.
Let me go stronger than that. Let's take Gandhi, who was a great man, a pacifist. The way he treated women was not terribly enlightened by our standards. Do you think that, like, no, we shouldn't have a guy in charge. We're going to wait until we find a woman who can take charge to kick the British out of India? Would you have actually wanted to say that?
Wow.
Or do you read in the short term, accepting patriarchy might be a reasonable compromise against worse evils?
Well, patriarchy is like the reality. So you're saying accepting the continuation of it to
tolerate it in the short term to create the conditions for something better.
like if you talk about the Revolutionary War in that context, And with in hindsight, is yes, like it's better to have this macho man fight these English people than everybody be all egalitarian and be under the thumb of the English.
Mhm.
In this case, I yeah, I cannot really compare it to this case because I'm not in that. I'm not in the.
So you don't see it that way, but I think the important thing they're talking about our, union working mom, she does, right? I think that's the interesting point about a priority rank, is that personal safety, economic efficiency, values alignment, those are things that make people choose what seems to you an irrational patriarchal solution makes it rational. And I think the interesting question is, and this is where I think the question of what you actually value, I think you care deeply about social justice, but you also care about political effectiveness. You want people who are actually going to create the conditions that will nurture this kind of thing in the future. And you're willing to make some trade-offs in the short term to get there. And I think that's an interesting note to end on. I got to run to a 2 o'clock meeting. Is there a way, like, we all have to make concessions to the world as it is today, right, in order to get anything done at all, which sucks, but that's reality. And that's, and like saying all these values I do care about at some level. And at any given time, I care about one more than others, but it varies. Like sometimes I think equality is the most important thing to focus on. Sometimes I think individual liberty is the most important thing to focus on. And it's
So
an interesting, yeah.
we have a
And to say,
time. We have a
yeah,
time, and it's important. We have a
yeah.
time or context or you know uh, access that people don't think about it, but it's there and it's important. Like these are the times that we are in, and in these times we have to, like I said, choose something that we might not be agreeable towards, but in this system of authority, one person at the top and everybody else below that, one decider type thing. We have to do it this way. Like, were we in a place where there's not just one decider, like we like total democracy, like for every decision everybody gets a vote. That's, people say that it's impossible, but let's imagine that it is possible. In that case, then the majority view would win in most situations, in all situations. So things would be more close to the time, because the public is polled every time. What do you think about this? What do you think about this? And it's not just one person's value system that reigns. It's like everybody's lecture
Yeah.
together.
So let's leave that as the question. I wrote in the chat too, like, what is the value that we could agree that we're moving towards, even if we have to make short-term compromises to get there? And what is the system that would most honor that value? And I think that would be actually a really interesting discussion. I don't know how far we can get with that, but it feels like there's definitely some nuance here that we could try and press into to see if we can find some common ground.
Okay.
Did you have a final comment, Tom? You were
Yes,
holding something up. Yes.
what you're discussing now, I'd like to remind you that my written concept of datocracy is exactly based on the fact that we don't elect a president for 4 years. The voter, if you like, makes decisions with different priorities on different things at any time there's a proposition in front of them. Okay, so it solves the problem of, your
Whether it solves it or not, I have a number of critiques that we can discuss next time.
it deals with the issue.
It does address it, and I want to acknowledge that it does. Whether it solves it, I think, is actually a great question that we should maybe debate next time.
I may have misspoken trying to squeeze it in by the end of the hour.
Yeah. But no, I think maybe starting with you pitching, reminding us, going back full circle to what is the problem Datocracy is designed to solve and how does it solve it? And then we can iterate from there. All right, unless something else comes up with a cool blog post from Ernest, let's go with that. I got to run. Thank you all, gentlemen. This was a lot of fun. I appreciate it. Sorry if we didn't get as far as we